Today's show is brought to you by Cotswolds Outdoor, Cross Bikes, Garmin and Cumulus. Hello and welcome to We Need More Heroes. In the age of Donald Trump as president and Kim Kardashian a role model for millions, it's easy to lose hope. But there are still brilliant people out there who can inspire us to live better. Join me, George Beasley, on a mission around the globe to find them. We Need More Heroes aims to inspire and guide ordinary people to live extraordinary lives. Visit weneedmoreheroes.co for show notes and more info. If you enjoy the episode, please leave us a review and rating on iTunes and subscribe if you'd like to hear more. Thanks for listening. So hello and welcome to another episode of We Need More Heroes. I'm really excited to be joined by today's guest. She did her undergraduate studies at Oxford and then went on to complete a master's in journalism at the University of Hong Kong. She then worked as an anchor and reporter there before moving to Malaysia, producing media for the likes of The Telegraph, the BBC, CNN and loads of other people. In 2013, she did an awesome cycling back from Kuala Lumpur to London, 10,000 miles. She's also cycled through the Amazon to raise awareness for environmental issues and the effects of development on local peoples, which we're going to get into. And she's currently got an incredibly awesome sounding job, adventure editor at Red Bull. So Pip Stewart, thank you for joining us on We Need More Heroes.
Awesome. Thanks, George.
It's awesome to have you. So you've done loads of amazing, cool stuff and so many questions to ask you, but it's normally works well if we just go right back to the start and sort of look at the transition from what people might think of as a more normal life to into adventure and all the stuff that you did. So can you just take us back a little bit? So you were studying at uni and what was going through your head, what you're thinking at the end of like year two? So you're studying history and politics at Oxford. Most people wouldn't think the next move is all those awesome things that you did. So tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, well, you know what? I spent most of my time at uni plotting adventures for my summer holidays. So we had hugely long holidays, about 2 months. And while all my friends were doing internships, I was suddenly like, shit, I was meant to organise internships. I hadn't done any of that. It just turned out that I planned a lot of travel. So instead of being career oriented, I basically went on holiday quite a lot, which didn't serve me well when it came to leaving university because all my friends had nice sort of jobs lined up in the city or in law or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I've got zero idea. So again, I went traveling and came back and started working at Innocent Drinks on their grad scheme because everyone had always told me you'd make a brilliant journalist, Pip, you should go into journalism. And I was like, no, I can definitely do numbers. I've got this business thing down. And sometimes you really should listen to your friends and family because I was shit. I couldn't sell anything. I mean, it was awful. So I started out at Innocent, which is an amazing company, but I was really quite bad at selling stuff. And eventually I was like, okay, I've sort of potted around the world now for quite a while. How do I make it look legit? So I was like, okay, more studying, but I'll do it somewhere exotic. So I basically applied to Hong Kong University to do journalism, ostensibly because I wanted to be a journalist. But in reality, it's just because I had no idea what I was trying to do. But I was like, okay, at least I'm in Asia. So yeah, I've always had that travel bug and just tried to fit my life around that in a sense.
Was there anything behind the move to Hong Kong other than you just wanted to do it abroad? Was there something specific that you wanted to go out there for?
Well, in a way, I'd applied to universities in America, in London, and also in Hong Kong because my aunt and uncle were living out there at the time. I'd never been, but they were like, oh, maybe you can get a scholarship. So I just emailed them and said, is there any chance, I could get this funded? And they replied and said, yes, we'll give you a fully funded scholarship. So I was
Boom.
like, result. If someone else can pay for me to study, even better. And it was an amazing course, actually. There were 36 different nationalities on my course, and it was just an amazing learning experience. If you love travel, which I did, just have all those kind of people in one place and the conversations you could have. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had, actually, studying at Hong Kong.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And then what happened next? So we mentioned that you started working as an anchor and a reporter, but how did that transition occur?
Well, after I'd studied at Hong Kong University, it was a year-long master's. And during that time, you do various internships. And then bizarrely, one of my tutors just emailed me and said, there's a job on the local TV station coming up. You know, you enjoyed that kind of part of your course. Do you want to give it a go? So went along, had an interview, and they sort of liked me. Yes, it's quite a small channel in Hong Kong. So they took a bit of a risk on this like fresh-faced, no idea what I was doing, just sort of potted out into Hong Kong, asking people lots of questions with a mic. But it was fantastic.
That was awesome. That sounds so much fun. What did you like most about doing that? What was the best part about that? For
me, it was just the fact Hong Kong's a really interesting place because you've got China. Well, it is part of China, but it strives to be different. So it's a great base to sort of understand Asian politics in general, looking at what's going on in China. I mean, China's shaping the world in a sense. So to have like a front seat view of that was fascinating. And then Hong Kong's just a really interesting city in itself because you've got the East meets West. I mean, it sounds quite cliched, but it's true. And just so many interesting stories in that part of the world. So yeah, you can keep digging around for a long time and not get bored.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It seems like that kind of thing is incredibly difficult to get into.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing to say there was like, once I knew I wanted to try and become a journalist in the UK, I'd applied to loads of internships here, you know, at the BBC. I was desperate to be a Blue Peter presenter at one point. I sent them hundreds of applications being like, come on, guys. And I was getting nothing because I didn't have any contacts here. And I was like knocking on doors and I was getting nowhere. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a completely different approach. I'm going to try a different door to knock on. And that's sort of what prompted me to go over to Asia as well. So I think if this is a kind of area or industry you want to go into, think differently about how you can get internships. And a lot of my friends went off to Cambodia and they were working for like the Phnom Penh Post. And so again, it's sort of thinking differently and thinking sort of in a global sense in terms of journalism.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I'm sure a lot of people who will listen, who are interested in journalism, will think, how do I get into it? And I guess think differently or look for opportunities abroad might be some advice that you would give. But is there anything else what would you say to you if you could go back just before you're about to start in journalism?
Accept that you're going to have to work for free for a little bit. Don't be afraid to just keep hounding editors. And actually, now being an editor myself, one of the most powerful things you can do is actually talk to people. Social media is fantastic for finding out who are the right people to talk to. But I get hundreds of emails a day. But if someone makes the effort to find out how to call me, I'm suddenly going to pay more attention to their emails. So in this age of social media, we make things a lot easier to find people, but we lose that sort of art of human communication. And I think as a journalist, that's one of the most powerful things we have is that face-to-face contact. So yeah, pick up the phone, have a chat.
Yeah, sounds good. And what was it actually like? So a day, because it sounds quite glamorous. I think, yeah, that sounds really cool. Like going around covering the elections and doing all of that kind of interesting stuff. Was it as glamorous as it sounds, or what was like a typical day like for you?
Oh, well, it is glamorous in a sense, but it's also hard work. So I wouldn't have a typical day. Sometimes I'd be working till 1 or 2 in the morning if I was on the late shift. I'd be working weekends, so I'd never see my partner really. He'd be getting up in the morning as I'd be coming home at night, and you sort of ships in the night. So it's a lot of hard work. But the flip side of that is I got to travel all around Hong Kong, all around the region, following stories, real opportunity as a young reporter just to get my mug on TV and to practice and to make mistakes. And I made many, many mistakes. But yeah, it was just an amazing experience all around, really, because it's an opportunity to really dig into someone else's culture. And
it was a little while ago now, but can you remember any of the stories that really resonated with you? Did you have one that you're just like, this is incredible, or something that you were really surprised at?
Well, something I was really surprised at is the Hong Kong desire to protest. Literally every weekend there'd be a protest about something, and I love it because, as I mentioned earlier, I think the Hong Kong citizens are very keen to sort of push against mainland China in a sense. They're very keen to keep that separated status. So often I would cover protests about that, which was fascinating. And another story which was interesting, sort of related to that, is how a lot of mainland Chinese mothers would come over to Hong Kong to try and give birth, so that they could get a Hong Kong ID card and Hong Kong citizenship. And that was hugely controversial because a lot of the Hong Kong citizens were saying, well, no, because we've got to pay for you and this shouldn't happen. So there was always protests about mainlanders, as they would call them, coming over to give birth. There is a lot of resentment's probably the wrong word, but tension between the two. And I suppose as someone coming from Europe, I hadn't really appreciated that until I started reporting in the region.
So you were there and you were working as an anchor and a reporter, and then you decided it's time to come home. What was the thought process behind you, and what was going through your head when you thought, okay, I think I want to go back to London now?
Well, I guess after Hong Kong, we moved to Malaysia. So it wasn't like an immediate transition. Charlie, my partner, got a job with AirAsia. So he'd followed me to Hong Kong when I got this opportunity. And then he got this job in Malaysia. So I was like, well, he followed me, I better follow him. So it actually worked out quite well because there was a Malaysian election going on at the time. So put in a year and a half there, I think. And then by that point, we'd been away for nearly 6 years and we were like, okay, it's nearly time to come home. We miss our family, we miss our friends. And yeah, we'd always talked about coming back overland. We thought maybe getting a train or buses or something like that. But Charlie's a really keen cyclist and he's like, why don't we cycle? And all I'd done up until that point was cycle around university. And when I say cycle, it was more like just pottering around going to lectures. So I've never been like a serious cyclist. But I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Just, cycle every day and you'll get fitter, right?
Yeah. And so it's 10,000 miles, which is for some people unfathomable. I guess in the adventure field, people are sort of not quite so shocked by it. But if you go and tell your mum that you're cycling 10,000 miles or most people down the pub, then they just think that shit is insane.
Yeah.
So now that you've got that big journey under your belt, again, like what would you say to somebody who's just about to embark, maybe like me, on a big cycling trip? This is just scratching my own itch. So what would be your advice?
Okay, first of all, George, I'm so jealous. I mean, your journey sounds amazing. I'd love to do North to South America. That just looks insane. But my advice would be don't overthink things, because I literally hadn't been on my bike until the day before I set off. So I hadn't worn in my saddle. I hadn't done any sort of prep. I didn't even train because I was like, well, I'm going to cycle every day. You're going to get fitter.
Cyclist enthusiasts are just throwing their iPod at the wall now. No.
What? That's one thing I probably would say, though, is just my fitness wasn't great. And actually 3 weeks in, poor Charlie, I completely threw my toys out the cot. I was like, Charlie, you picked the wrong girl. I can't do this. I'm going home. Take me to the airport. I mean, literally, I had a tantrum. And I think that would have been avoided if I had felt a bit fitter, because the fact was I was just really embarrassed. I got to a first hill and I was like, I can't do this. I had to get off my bike. I had to push it up. And by hill, I mean, it was a slight up incline. It was nothing. Whereas actually, if I'd had a little bit more fitness behind me, that would have been a bit better. But yeah, just take things day by day and you do get fitter. And, I then managed to do the Pamir Highway in the end. And I was like, if I'd have done that at the start, there's no way I could do it. So you do increase your fitness. Don't overthink things. Just try and enjoy the moment, enjoy each day. And, yeah, can I come too?
There's always room for a small one, and everyone can come and join. Did you record your trip with a blog or with photos or that kind of stuff? Because I think a lot of people decided they want to go on a big trip, and then their question is, how should I record it, and should I record it? Because sometimes it can become the trip if you just spend all your time, some people just videoing it. And if you're going to release a documentary, then it's, if you're like one of the adventure dudes, then that makes sense. But if you're not, and it's just for some sort of, you want to show your mum what you've done, then how do you tread the fine line between actually experiencing it and being present, and also making sure that you've got a lot of stuff to show when you get home? Yeah,
I definitely say on any journey like this, do what feels right for you. So if it's like a first journey, I'd say just enjoy it, which is what I tried to do, even though I'm a journalist, and I did write some stories off the back of it, and I did take a few videos and photos, and they have appeared in various publications, but it wasn't the goal of my trip. The goal of my trip was to I just immersed myself in the world. And yes, I probably should have and could have done more in terms of making a career out of this. But at the time, I didn't realize that I wanted to be an adventure journalist. I was just like, this is a way to get home. And personally, I just found being present and really listening to people rather than asking questions and coming at things from an angle of a story made a big difference to me. So yeah, I sort of did balance getting stories versus just, really connecting with people, I suppose.
So what's a typical day like when you're, again, maybe there isn't a real typical day, but what does it look like? Like if you think about what most people's daily life looks like now, it's wake up, have some quick breakfast, go to work, sit at an office desk, maybe have half an hour out for lunch, and then maybe go to the gym and then come home. So how different is it to do that kind of stuff?
Ironically, George, it's not that dissimilar. So a lot of people have said to me, oh my God, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, no, you can, because every morning you get up, you prepare your shit, you get out the door, you go to work, and you have a lunch break and all those things that you said. And that's exactly what you do on the bike. You get up, you unpack your tent, you have breakfast, and your work is your cycling. And so I think anyone can do it genuinely. If you put 8 hours a day into something, you're going to get further towards your goal. And for most of that's now work. But I can't see why that can't be cycling or running or whatever it is that you want to do, because we've got that mentality already.
So by the time you were, after a few months, you said that the trip sort of was the training. And I really like that idea because it means I don't have to do any training, which is really nice. But it makes sense, right? If you're going to be cycling every day for a year and a half, then you're probably going to get quite good at cycling.
Yeah.
But also take your point that it's probably a good idea to do a little bit before you go, so you're not completely overwhelmed and you can actually move when you've got a bike laden with 4 huge panniers on and loads of shiz.
The other thing no one told me about was I was like, I'm going to lose so much weight. I'm going to look gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. That was counteracted by Nutella. I was like, oh, I'm doing so much cycling. I can eat fake Nutella till it comes out of my ears. So yeah, I think whilst Charlie lost quite a bit of weight, I sort of overdid it on the cake and Nutella. So it's like, yeah, that would be another tip, is like you can't actually eat as much as you think you can.
So you obviously came 10,000 miles and all the way from Malaysia. So where really surprised you or really impressed you, or where did you really enjoy?
I love the stans. Yeah, traveling in Islamic countries is fascinating for me because the people are just wonderful. And I think a lot of the rhetoric we hear in the mainstream media is changing, but it's almost a culture of fear. And actually, we found that people would open up their houses to us. And in Islam, they've got a saying that the guest is a gift from God. And literally, we would have people trying to give us the very little that they had. And we just experienced such warmth and hospitality. And it wasn't put on. It was real, genuine warmth. And they were like, what the hell are you doing here? You mad cyclists, come on in, sleep in our living room. And it was just a very sort of humbling experience. And I suppose the other thing about Central Asia is you've got really big and dramatic landscapes as well. So you'll have days and days where you don't see anyone and you're camping on your own and it feels like wilderness. And then when you do have a human encounter, they're usually just wonderfully brilliant and very memorable. So the kindness of strangers is rife in Central Asia.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme from some of the guests that we've had on, but also a lot of people who I've talked to in the adventure community. Everybody seems to love going out to Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Iran, everywhere that we're told you shouldn't go there because it's terrorists who want to kill you as soon as you get there. And it's always seems the complete opposite.
Oh, because they're like, you're a tourist. What are you doing here? And I've always found actually some of the places where we think we shouldn't go are actually some of the most rewarding to go to, providing you're safe and obviously check the travel advice and all of that, but do take things with a pinch of salt. Did
you ever feel unsafe when you were there?
No. Once I suppose, on the Tajik-Afghan border, we wheeled our bicycles into a field, looked around and we saw an unexploded mortar at our feet. So swiftly wheeled the bicycle back, got back onto the road. It was getting dark at this point, so we just pulled over onto another patch of grass, put up our tent. Next morning, looked down and found another unexploded mortar. So we had...
Sweet baby Jesus.
I know, exactly. That was sort of...
Sleeping in a minefield.
Yeah, accidental sleeping in a minefield. Wasn't great. And that was probably the most scared that we'd been, because had we, moved the tent a little bit, that could have been game over.
What a good adventure, though.
Yeah, in hindsight.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah.
About at least 3 months afterwards, then you can see the funny side of it.
Yeah.
Did you have anywhere? Where was your favorite food, or what were some things that you really enjoyed along the way?
Turkey.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was just, the food and the culture. I really enjoyed Turkey. It was always one of those places that I'd never thought, I desperately want to go there. But just on food alone, I'd recommend, if you're a foodie, get yourself to Turkey. It was delicious.
What would be an awesome Turkish dish?
Oh, I love the kebabs.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, a kebab is something I've always associated with like a very drunk night out, and the thing that's probably quite dirty and that you shouldn't be eating.
Mm-hmm. But 3 a.m. doner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know, in Turkey, I was like, I feel like this is healthy. I feel like it was just delicious, like really fresh and not at all like your 3 a.m., munchies.
Yeah. And whilst you were going through these Muslim countries, did you feel, I'm just wondering how you were received as a lady who's obviously not a Muslim, just coming through on a bicycle. It must just look very weird for them. So were you always met in a friendly way? Yeah,
no, genuinely I was. I suppose the only slight confusion in countries, Islamic countries or generally countries where people have children younger, it's like, how old are you? And I was 30 at the time. They're like, but where are your children? So I think that was kind of a bigger deal for people, that I was a woman without children at the age of 30. And it was a big shock. And, had a lot of comments about that more than anything else. But I think, to be honest, I think it was a brilliant thing traveling as a woman, because people, at the risk of stereotyping, people are a lot kinder. Charlie's traveled on his own as well. And he was saying that as a couple, or even when I travel on my own as a woman, people are quite receptive to you because they almost want to check that you're okay. And I think it brings out that maternal nurturing instinct. And again, I don't want to generalize because that's not always the case, but it's what I found so far.
I can see that. And just thinking about my own little bit of traveling experience, I think when I've been there with a girl, it tends to be a little bit warmer reception. If you're a bloke, then they tend to think that you must be doing some gun-ho stuff and you're just off by yourself.
Exactly. And also people tell you stuff as women. It's great. If you want to get information out of someone, send in a woman, because they're just chat. And I've always found that actually as a journalist, I probably find out a bit more because of my gender. Well, actually I can't say that, but I find my gender is very helpful. In terms of getting information out of people. So you're a journalist, you obviously do lots of writing, but I'm just wondering if there are some things that you learned to appreciate or some things that you learned along the way that have stuck with you. Yeah, well, it wasn't on this bike trip, but I did a trip to East Timor and I met an American man there who said something to me that has always stuck with me. And he said, Pip, everyone can teach you something. And for me, that's now my life mantra, because I think if you approach anyone in this world, they're going to know something that you don't. And for me, especially as a journalist, that's just hugely fascinating, because I think sometimes we go through life thinking, we're special, or we're this and we're that, and we're not. Everyone is equal. Everyone has their own strengths and merits. And I just love that idea that everyone can teach you something. And I suppose the thing that the bike trip taught me is that you don't need as much as you think. We had a few T-shirts, a couple of trousers, and that was pretty much it, and you survived. And then actually stuff can be quite overwhelming, and it can be quite a hindrance, I suppose, in life. It does sort of stop you setting up your house and going on a big trip, because you're like, where am I going to put all of this? Or so yes, declutter your life. Everyone can teach you something. And I'm also a trained meditation teacher, so something that I really try and do on any journey is just try and really be present in the moment. And I know that sounds really like cliched, but it's true. If you can just really enjoy the moment, you'll remember it a lot more. But what does your daily practice look like? Or I don't know if you do it daily, but what does your meditation practice look like? I definitely use Headspace, because that's a really good way of just focusing the mind, and the way he talks you through the meditations is actually very accessible. And for me, something that people say a lot is, but I can't stop my thoughts. And the whole point is you're not meant to. It's almost like if you imagine boats going down a river and those boats are your thoughts, it's just watching what boats are going along and being aware that they're there. And gradually you'll find fewer boats come along. And if the ones that keep coming along a lot, it might suggest that you've got a certain issue that you need to sort out, or it's just a way of sort of filtering all this monkey chatter that we have going on in our daily lives, and just trying to really focus the mind on a few key thoughts or the breath or whatever it is. I mean, my favorite way to meditate is actually going for a walk and just being hyper aware of what's around me. So it doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged. And for many people, actually, they say the bicycle is a form of meditation. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that when you just get into that flow. And essentially, I think that's what meditation is. It's that flow. It's that being ultra focused and not worrying about the banalities of life, I suppose.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the walking series on Headspace as well. It was he has this line where he just says like, and it might start to feel like you're in a film set because you normally are so distracted when you're walking. You listen to music or a podcast or your just thoughts are running one after the other. I've got to remember the shopping. Oh God, I wish that girl's such a bitch at work. Yeah. And you just have all this chatter going on. And then when you stop that and you actually just pay 100% attention to like the feeling of your feet making contact with the floor and looking around and thinking about the colors of things, it feels like you're on a film set, and it's really weird. I remember stopping in the street. I was like, oh my God, am I high? Like what is happening? What
was in my tea this morning?
Yeah, we got some serious magic mushrooms on the go. You didn't even have to pay for them.
But I'd recommend doing that on your trip, actually, not magic mushrooms, but just meditating in the morning. Like, so I'd often get up and get out of my tent and just try and be really aware of where I was and just kind of be like, hell yeah, like I'm not at work, I'm about to go cycling. This is awesome. And it really just helps you or help me appreciate the day to day, because after a certain point, I think when you're on the road a lot, it becomes like, oh, here we go again. Got to pack up the tent, blah, blah, blah. And actually, it's a really special time in your life. And I don't think you're going to have many opportunities to do something like this again, or hopefully you will, but it's not necessarily for everyone.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you do as a daily practice or anything else that you use to help you live life better?
I bloody love yoga. Yeah, it's just, for me, it's got to be exercise. I think exercise in any form, be that cycling or yoga or swimming or just moving. And I suppose the biggest thing is just being in nature. I read a report recently that said actually in terms of mental health, getting out into the countryside, getting out into nature is one of the best things that you can do. And I completely relate to that. If I'm having a bad day or if I'm in a bad mood, if I go for a little walk, even if it's to like Regent's Park or something and just see some greenery, I feel better.
It sort of makes sense that your body's not adapted and not made to thrive.
Oh, absolutely.
Sitting down and living inside.
We live in a box and we stare at a box in terms of the computer, and we go to work in a box, many of us in an office. And it's just really unnatural. And I think throw in things like social media and a little bugbear of mine is we always focus on being happy in society. You know, if you're not happy, then there's something wrong. And actually, there's a whole range of emotions in life, and they're all equally valid. And this kind of constant striving to be happy, I think, is actually detrimental.
Ooh, this is a good one. I've been thinking loads about this lately. Yeah. Come on, tell me more.
Well, I don't know. This is something that adventure made me realize, this long cycle, is that actually a lot of the time on this trip, it was really shit. It's like my arse hurt, my legs hurt, especially in France. You know, we were cycling through the rain because we completely mistimed it. We got there in December and we were actually cycling for SANE, which is a mental health charity. And it's slightly ironic that I look back now and it's one of the best things I've ever done. And I'm like, it was amazing. But at the time, it wasn't. But the only reason it was so amazing is because it taught me resilience. It taught me that grit. It taught me to kind of dig deep when things are really crap. And yeah, ironically, that has made me happy, but it didn't make me happy at the time. So I actually say to people now, chase adventure and chase all those emotions that come with it. Don't chase happiness, because it's sort of like this false goal in a way. It is just one emotion in life. And actually, it's probably going to make you sad if you're thinking, but I'm not happy right now. What's wrong with me? Everyone else is happy. Look at Instagram. Everyone's having a wonderful time. And I'm just feeling a bit down.
We've only so recently moved up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and now we need self-actualization. And we were talking before about, I want a job that's meaningful and purposeful. Whereas 100 years ago, if you could put food on the table, you're winning. That was all you needed. You're right at the bottom. You needed food, shelter, warmth. And think about, I mean, it wasn't that way for everybody, but for a lot of society it was. And people didn't worry about, are they making the world a better place?
Yeah.
There wasn't, it's almost like the choice paradox. Now the fact that we can almost do anything as to middle-class white people born in the top 1% of the world, you do have the opportunity to almost do anything. So in some ways, if you don't conquer the world and you had the opportunity opportunity to. It can make you feel a little bit like you've wasted your life.
Absolutely. There's a great TED talk, I think, by Barry Schwartz called The Paradox of Choice, or he wrote a book called The Paradox of Choice. And it's basically that we'll go to the supermarket now and there'll be so many boxes of cereal and we'll pick one either based on price or, health or whatever it is. But we could have picked the other one and maybe that was better. Maybe I should have paid a bit more and had a better quality. And we can constantly second guess and we're never sort of content with the choice that we make, even, in terms of partners or in terms of job or career, because the grass is always greener, especially now with things like Tinder. So easy. I'm so glad I'm not in the dating scene now because it's so easy probably just to swipe again, It's like the choice, wow, it's overwhelming. And that was really hit home to me when I did this trip in the Amazon, because we spoke to some people who had literally been part of the isolated tribes in remote Peru. And 5 years ago, they came out of isolation because they'd seen illegal loggers on their land and they'd seen them wearing clothes and they'd seen them with machetes. And they were like, we want what they've got. We're naked. We don't have any tools. All our tools have been made out of bamboo and wood. And you think, wow, shoes, clothes, machetes, and we're at a whole different stage of development. And I think that sort of makes you realize actually, what do we need in life? And we probably don't need as much as we think we do. It's, as you say, the hierarchy of needs, as long as we've got food and shelter. And I think something we're really missing in Western society is community now. I mean, I don't know how many of you know your neighbours, but it's sad to say, but I don't really know mine. And I'll try and engage with people, but often they don't want to know. And London's quite unfriendly like that. And I think, community is really important. And it's something that we just aren't making enough of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's another thing. You asked me why I started this podcast. And I think one of the ideas was to be able to start a bit of a community for people who live outside of the big cities. Like London is very unfriendly generally, or it can be very unfriendly generally, I should say. People are quite standoffish and it's quite unusual to talk to a stranger.
Yeah, until the night tube, and then it all changes.
Oh yeah, there we go.
And you make mates for life.
Yeah, past 11 o'clock and all of a sudden you're best friends with Baz, who's like having a doner kebab next to you.
Exactly.
But I set myself a challenge to try and talk to people on the tube, because I was thinking a lot about what do people need to be happy, from just people in my own life and also myself. I was just like, so what is it that we need to be happy? And looking around the world at different people and looking back in time, different books. And it was just really interesting. And community always came up as one of the things that you really needed. And so I tried to start to talk to people on the tube, and the looks that I got in the day, I did it for probably only a week. But we'd been out for a few beers after work on a Thursday. So I had, I think, 3 or 4. So not drunk, but enough to just be like, I should talk to a stranger on the tube. And there was a girl next to me, and she just sat down. And then I was just like, right, I should talk to her now. And then it had gone too long. The doors closed, and I was like, oh, you can't just start talking to someone now. You have
now
to.
Now you're going to look crazy.
Yeah. And I was like, and now I'm thinking about it loads, which is really weird. If people knew that I was thinking about talking to her. And then after about 3 stops, I just went, hiya, and just everybody stopped. People stopped reading their newspapers. They all just looked over, just like, is that guy talking to someone that he doesn't know? That is, wow, shit's going down. And she just went, I've got a boyfriend. And I was like, oh.
You need to work on your lines, George.
I know. I didn't even get to use my lines.
That's sad, isn't it?
I know. So, and it's not all like that. It's obviously just one story, but you do feel like there's a lack of community, especially when you go and, like you said, you went to the Amazon and you saw people and their elders are incredibly respected and everybody lives together. There is that sense of community that you belong to something more. But I'd love to hear a bit more about your trip to the Amazon, and can you just tell us the story about your Amazon trip, how it came about and what it was?
So I met up with adventurer Reza Pakravan, who is a world record holder. He cycled the length of the planet from north to south, and he's got the world record for the fastest time across the Saharan desert.
Wow.
So he's a bit of a serious cyclist, and he was looking for a partner to do a TV documentary, to cycle the Trans-Amazonian Highway in Brazil, and also to go into Peru, up into the headwaters of the Amazon, and to look at how deforestation is impacting on indigenous tribes. So he put it to me that I, could be a good partner for him because I cycle and I've got TV background, and I maybe missold how fast I cycled to Reza, which did cause a few problems. But no, we set off together and it took 3 months, and we basically cycled the Trans-Amazonian Highway and then took a combination of plane and boat in Peru to go and explore some of the more remote headwaters. And it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I didn't expect it to change me in any way. I'd done, as far as I was concerned, I'd done a big adventure and I probably learned all I could. And I was really humbled at how much I learnt about myself, and just the communities out there are just phenomenal. And also the message about the environment. Again, I'd sort of become a little bit jaded. I think we grow up hearing, the Amazon's in trouble, the Amazon's in trouble. But when you're cycling past burning forests, and when you're talking to people who have had family members murdered because of their work in the environmental sort of lobbies and things, and you just think, wow, this shit is real. And I do think it needs to be looked at again and revisited and talked about, because that, as cliched as it is, they are the lungs of the planet, and we rely on the Amazon.
What would you like to see more of for deforestation?
Well, it's one of those things, George, that I got into a real funk about, actually, because I started looking at some of the reasons for deforestation, and you've got cattle ranching. So, I do eat meat. So I was like, oh my gosh, I eat beef. Maybe I should stop eating beef because it's destroying the rainforest. Soya plantations. I used to have soya milk lattes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I drink soya milk. Gold, not that I'm a massive fan of gold, but jewelry and things like that.
It's covered in gold. We're in Pip's living room and it is just caked with it. Honestly, it's disgusting.
I live in a palace.
So Persian palace here. Opulence.
We're in my shed. No. So yeah, again, gold. And it was all, and even wood, the type of wood that you have in your house. And I started to think that a lot of these issues that are causing deforestation, I've, as a consumer, been completely unknowing about. And then I was like, well, how do you educate everyone about where your products come from? And it's a huge job, and I don't think you can. So part of it is, I think, putting pressure on big businesses to make sure that, their soya milk is produced ethically, or that their cocoa for chocolate is produced ethically and not being cut down huge swathes of rainforest. As consumers, I'd say just be aware of the source of your products. I've been there, you can go completely nuts over it and start doubting everything that you do. But I'd also throw it onto big businesses and say, don't just greenwash things, like really pay attention to where you're getting your products.
So if you could change one thing in your life to try and help deforestation, would it be to stop eating meat? Would it be to stop eating soy? Would it be to lobby business? Like, because most people have the energy to sort of think about one or maybe two things. If somebody's listening to this thinking, yeah, I do care about that, what would be the thing that they should do?
Do you know what I think the biggest thing would be is to get more advocates. So go to the Amazon, go and visit it, go and stay in eco lodges, go and understand why this forest is a magical place. And again, it sounds really trite until you're there and until you feel the magic of the place, but it's just amazing. And I think the more people that can see it, the more people that talk about it, I personally think that's probably the best way to change things, because governments have cleaned up their act. There's still a lot of corruption in places like Brazil and Peru. There have been a lot of improvements, but it's not going far enough. And I think we need more of a united voice, more pressures from governments. And then on the ground, it's a case of, if you're a poor farmer and you can get $15,000 for one tree, well, if it was me, I'd probably consider it as well to feed my family. So it's not a case of loggers are bad. It's just the economic environment that they're working in. So I think as consumers, that's where we've got power, the power of the wallet. And as you said before, we're so lucky in that we are from a wealthy part of the world. Income inequality is so huge. And I think trying to redress some of that balance and just being a bit more aware and socially responsible in terms of where we choose to travel and how we choose to spend our money.
You mentioned that it changed you more than you expected, and that you'd already done a big cycling trip, and yet it had this huge effect on you. And perhaps because you had this goal of discovering more about the way the Amazon works and deforestation and all that kind of stuff. So what was it that you found that really hit you, or how did you change from that trip?
I think it comes back to the choices that you make in life. And I hadn't anticipated it to have any sort of impact in that at all. But as I said, I started thinking about the kind of choices that I make on a day-to-day life, whether that's eating meat or the sort of products that I use, or even the direction my life's going in. And you go, gosh, wow, okay, there's a whole nother way of living out here. And I suppose the biggest thing for me is I just felt so peaceful in the jungle. I just felt so whole and so alive, and like, this is where I'm meant to be, beyond, I'm not at work and I'm traveling. I just felt very, very content. And I think the idea of coming back to London, coming back to a big city, which, London's fascinating, but I don't think it's my true home in a sense. I found that quite a tough thing to get my head around. And what I found really interesting in my own job, I've interviewed a lot of adventurers, and something that no one really talks about, or we are talking about more now, is coming back, and it's that post-trip blues. And I think a lot of people do get that, because you're suddenly gone from doing all these exciting things out of your comfort zone, you're learning every day and you're getting new experiences, and then you're back and everything seems the same, but you feel so changed. And I think trying to readjust and fit back into your normal life, it was the same thing when I came back from Malaysia and Hong Kong. It was actually the reverse culture shock. It wasn't seeing these other cultures. It was seeing my own culture with new eyes. And that, for me, is more of a bit of a head fuck than anything else.
Yeah, it really resonated with me when you were talking about you've never felt so content, and you searched for it for a little while, but I could see that you really felt like, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And I think after living in a big city for a while, and it's always so busy, everyone's just obsessed with success and making it and making the most of every single second, and rinsing life to its absolute core, or just squeezing every bit out of it, because you think, I have to do this, bit like we were talking before. And then you go to somewhere like that. I was in the jungle in Bolivia in Rarenabaki for a few days, on an ayahuasca ceremony, and it was just incredible, like one of the most profound experiences of my life. And it was now it's a bit of a shame it's become a real tourist trap. I was fortunate to go some years ago, so it wasn't quite such an industry, but I don't think I've ever had such a peaceful morning as the day when I woke up after it. And I'm sure it's just because it's not placebo, but I'm sure I look through it with some rosy tinted glasses. But when I look at pictures of myself the next day, I look like a changed person. I'm sure.
Do you look like a woman, George?
Yeah, that's it. It's the long hair, and I had a shave, and I forgot that. I don't know what it is. I think it's probably just because I look back with such fond memories about how I felt the next day, to have absolutely no angst or worry. Like, I'm not particularly anxious person generally, but to wake up that morning and just be like, I am completely still. I could die happy now if I did. Aww. Whereas now I rarely feel that. And so, yeah, I think it's incredibly important, like you say, to go out to places like that and see. You don't have to live how we do it's only a small percentage of the world that's actually living 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's loads of people who are just chilling out. Even if you go to Spain, people are just sitting on there having a cigarette and a coffee.
And actually, those are the moments in life that often like the most memorable, actually. And it's funny you say I could die happy, because we were in this small biplane trying to get to our first boat to take us into the headwaters of the Amazon. And we got caught in a storm. And literally, I'm not the best flyer as it is. And this plane just dropped out of the sky. And I was like, oh gosh, this is game over. See you later, everyone. So I don't know. But the weirdest thing was I tried to like breathe, calm myself down. And I just thought, you know what? Up until this point in my life, I've done everything I can. I've done everything that I wanted to do. And if this is it, so be it. And that was actually, I hadn't expected to think that. And it was a really nice and very comforting thought. And I think what I've learned from that is just get out into the world if that's what you want to do. Go and see things. And just enjoy life. Sometimes in life you get a wake-up call which makes you just snap into action, and other times you just need to snap yourself into action.
So how do you think about reconciling the two? Like, you go away on these big adventures and you come home and you think, yeah, that was amazing, and you are, and things are still the same, but it's so difficult to try and reconcile the two. Do you think you can? What, like with the post-adventure blues, what do you do?
I think, again, it comes back to acceptance of what I was talking earlier about don't chase happiness. And it's accepting that on this trip, it was amazing and it's exciting and it was like cracking experience, but also, you know, don't idealize it because it was also tough. And there were also days when Reza and I were going to kill each other. And it's the same in daily life. It's just sort of accepting that this is where you are right now. If you're working towards a goal of some sort, then focus on that. But just don't get too het up because some things change. And there's a Buddhist saying that's something along the lines of who knows if it's good or bad. And you can be as high as a kite one moment and then down in the dumps the next. And the only constant is change. So yeah, it's just accepting where you're at.
So now, adventure editor at Red Bull. People would kill for that job. What do you actually do?
Jump off buildings, wingsuit flying, you know.
Base jumping.
Yeah, exactly.
You're doing that earlier, right? You just,
yeah, exactly.
You just come from
caught me off a building.
London's highest peaks.
Yeah.
No, so what do you actually do and what's it like working for Red Bull?
Red Bull is an amazing company. They really do look after their people, which is cool. But on a day-to-day basis, I'm editing stories, I'm getting pitches, I'm thinking about multimedia ideas. So I basically look after the website side of things, which is fun. It's also at times very tedious because I'm reading about other people's adventures and I just want to go on my own. But they were very good actually to give me time off to go to the Amazon. So I think they appreciate that there's this restless beast in me. And I think they appreciate the benefits of me getting out into the community and bringing back stories from it as well.
Red Bull is definitely one of those companies, a bit like Google, but probably even more so, that everybody wants to work for, who's into that kind of stuff. So you really do work there. What advice would you give to somebody who was just like, I would love to work for Red Bull?
Well, try and find people to talk to. Again, like this is my advice in life is ask people for a coffee, ask people for a drink or a Red Bull or whatever it is. Like just talk to people because most people are very happy, I think, to give up their time or want to help people. And I've got to where I've got to now because other people have taken the time to help me. And I'm always keen to mentor young people or just to try and give a little bit of time or advice. So yeah, just ask someone at Red Bull, even if that's me, like, how do you get through the door? One of the other things I'd say is be quite clear on what you want to do because people will often come to me and say, I want to work for Red Bull. I'm like, okay, but what do you want to do? Because I can't do anything. I edit stories and I put together stories. Like, do you want to work in events or do you want to work in sales? What is it? And I can try and direct you to the right people. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. So
there you go. Just run up to Pip Stewart and just say, help me.
Yeah, get me in the door. Get me in the door.
You're going to have 1,000 people approach you.
Yeah. You know, what's the worst that's going to happen? Someone's going to tell you no or not reply to you or tell you to bugger off. They're too busy. And then, you know.
And that maybe sort of leads on to one of my next questions is and you've definitely given some great nuggets of advice throughout, but what are your big tips? If you could say, this is how you live a good life. If I could, maybe even for yourself or anybody, like 2 or 3 things that you think, yeah, this is it. This is what you've got to think about.
I suppose my pieces of life advice would be everyone can teach you something and approach people with that view. You're no better, you're no worse. It's just, we're all humans on this planet. Don't regret stuff. Just go and do stuff. Don't overthink it. Like if you've got a dream, try and do it. Talk to people. Yeah, don't be afraid to have a chat. Conversations lead to conversations is one of my favorite phrases as well.
So coming to the end now, and thank you so much for your time, but a couple of questions that I really like to ask people at the end. So the show is called We Need More Heroes, and I've talked a lot about the concept and why that sort of came around, and we had a little chat earlier. But have you got any heroes or role models that you have really admired through your life? They don't have to be a hero. I tend to use the term loosely, not in a sort of Herculean way. But is there anyone that you really admire or somebody that you think, yeah, they're amazing?
There are, yeah. I suppose people I've looked to would be my parents. I know that sounds like really cheesy, but
that's a good one.
Definitely they've just sort of lived the way that they want to live, which is really cool and
rare.
Yeah, but it also kind of makes you realize, I suppose one of the things that has got me into the world of adventure is I've got in the back of my head that everything's going to be okay. One way or another, I'll find a job in a bar or waitress or whatever it takes. I'm prepared to do it. And my dad said to me growing up, be nice to people on the way up because you'll meet them on the way down. And I think if you're humble in life, if you're thankful for where you're at, then, that's a really good place to be in life. So yeah, I admire my parents. And then I guess Mandela as well. I've just come back from South Africa, and I think, the whole thing for me is about, we are just one person, one in a 6 billion or whatever it is. And yeah, don't get too above your station. Don't think you're special in any sense, because we're all part of a big community. We're all part of something greater, however you want to see that, and treat people with respect and dignity. And I think that's a pretty good way to live.
Do you think that heroes are born or made?
I think they're made. I think if you look at Mandela, part of why I think he's so great is he spent so long oppressed. He was in jail. He could have come out and he could have been as angry as he was when he went in. He could have been more of a fighter, and he came out and he was like, no, now is the time for calm. Now is the time for quiet. And I wonder if he would have been the same if he'd not experienced such hardship and such toughness, I suppose. And again, that's probably one of those life lessons that things might be really shit for you right now, but they will get better. Like nothing lasts forever. Things do change. And yeah, heroes are definitely made.
And it leaves you with that resilience and grit that you mentioned earlier on our own small examples on these adventures. When you are just having a shit time and you think, I don't want to do it, but you push through and you do it, then you do break through a little bit, and you steadily become a bit more resilient and get that extra grit and realize you have that self-belief that just develops that you can only really get from testing yourself.
Exactly. Those dark moments might prove to be your best asset in life.
Yeah. So I normally ask this before, but this is the last question because I want to be respectful of your time. But what do you think about the advice, follow your passion? I don't know if I want to tell you anymore because I don't want to lead you, but...
Yeah, so I went back to my old school to talk on this sort of topic, and I said, don't follow your passion because you might not know what your passion is, or you might taint it in a way. So what I'd recommend is do what you're interested in. So that might be, you could have a normal day job, and then on the weekends you can go wild camping every weekend if that's what you really want to do. And I think a lot of people in life, we don't know what we want to do. I've pretty much winged my entire career. It's not been planned. It's just sort of happened because I've gone from one thing that I'm interested in to another thing that I'm interested in. And I look back and I'm like, yeah, that was a pretty interesting career actually so far. And I hope it continues that way. But it's not through any sort of grand design in a sense, other than this thread that I do have a passion, and that is travel, and I have followed it. But it comes with sacrifices as well. I'm never going to be rich. This is not going to be the path to riches. And actually, if you love adventure travel, but you also love business, why not set up your own business? And then you've got the flexibility of time to pay to go to these amazing remote locations and do whatever it is that you want to do. So there's no one size fits all. It's great if you know what your passion is and you want to do it and you figure out a way to earn money from it. On that, there's a fantastic talk by a guy called Alan Watts. I don't know if you've seen it. If money was no object.
Yeah.
So I quite like that. But at the same time, I'd also say take things with a pinch of salt and, design more of a life that you think would suit you. And stop comparing yourself to other people, because you only have like an insight into what you think their life is like. You don't actually know what it's like on the inside.
Absolutely. I think that was a great summary of the things that I really wanted to try and draw out, and why I asked so many people that question, because I'm thinking a lot about now, which is why I'm so interested to hear people's thoughts. Do I abandon the career that pays you loads of money but I don't enjoy it, to go and find something a bit more creative and meaningful, but ultimately you might not succeed? It's quite unlikely that you will, and is that a good idea? It's I think a lot of people are in that position.
Yeah. Well, I'd say if you think there's a way you can get back into what you're doing, if you don't hate it that much, or, funnily enough, I think employers really valued the fact that I'd taken a year out to do something a bit wacky. So go and try something, go and retrain for a year, and you can call it your gap year. Like, the beauty of life is there's a thing called spin and PR, and like you can pretty much twist whatever it is to fit a certain way. So I wouldn't get too het up about it. And at the end of the day, we only have like one life. So if there is something you want to do, try it. And if it doesn't go well, then, you know, other people have failed. Life goes on. You'll find something. And if you're the kind of person who will try something, you'll no doubt get a job with someone. And the type of people who want to employ you, you'll find them.
There we go. Pip Stewart spitting knowledge on We Need More Heroes.
Don't know about that. If I get a load of people being like, I've got no job, nowhere to live, I want to live in your gold-plated
job and
palace.
I've lost it all. My wife's left me and my kids hate me.
God damn you, Pip Stewart.
Pip, thank you very much. Thanks so much. It's been amazing to hear about your adventures and your story, and I'd love to chat again someday. But if people want to hear a little bit more about you or find out a little bit more about you, where can they go?
Ooh. Plug www.philippastewart.com. That's 2 L's and 2 P's, or at Pip Stewart on Instagram, or at pstewart_ on Twitter.
And you can see some awesome pictures of the South Africa trip that you've just been on.
Whoop, whoop.
So check it out. Pip Stewart, thank you very much. Bye. There we have it. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, spread the love and share it with anyone you think would also benefit from it by sharing it on Facebook or Twitter with the hashtag #WeNeedMoreHeroes. Connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at @WeNeedMoreHeroes and just more_heroes on Twitter. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and in fact any of our other episodes, so get in touch at weneedmoreheroes.co. Thanks so much for tuning in and sharing the love. And thank you again to today's sponsors, Cotswolds Outdoor, Cross Bikes, Garmin and Cumulus for making this show happen. You've heard the magic, now do something with it and be the hero in your own story.